Good morning and thank you for joining the Turnkey and Microsoft second installment of our field service webinar series. Today we will be focusing on your service technician. We will talk about how to empower and how to allow them to compete and complete on their jobs without creating a frustration. Dave, next slide please. From the overview perspective of the presentation, we will do a quick introduction, and the panelists today, myself, Rokas Varanavičius, I'm the practice director at the Turnkey Technologies, overseeing CRM and all the fun things that are going on in here. Dave Bonney is a technical specialist focusing primarily on field service and enterprise accounts. And then we also have Dave Clark from Microsoft, global black belt, knows the technology, knows the areas, knows all the pain points that you as a managers and you as a technicians potentially are going through. With that said, make sure your screens are in the full screen mode. Make sure if you have any questions, type them in. We will monitor the queues and we'll be addressing those throughout the presentation or at the very end as suited based on the questions. And as you see from the agenda perspective, we are going to dive in straight into the deep conversations. So the first topic is the field service, overview and the value. Then we talk about briefly what is going on with the market and then changing workforce and why should be caring about, what are your technicians thinking about the software. And then we'll dive straight into the demo. So from setting expectations perspective, we will be focusing primarily on the field service technicians today. We'll be talking about mobile client primarily. Obviously, the technology is wide. The technology has a lot of aspects that are exciting that can allow you to help do the things a little bit better, but today's focus is the field service technicians. We'll have another set of installments from the webinar's perspective that will talk about different subjects. So without any further ado, let me talk briefly about the Turnkey Technologies and who we are and why we're excited to present today with Microsoft. So if you look at this particular slide, in the business for over 23 years, we have led some of the field service efforts at Microsoft. We have led the cloud service provider efforts. We have led some other initiatives talking about, joining the ERP technology to the CRM technology, the field service technology, and optimizing those things. So really, one of the things that we pride ourselves is to really be an innovative sort of partner that brings the things together. So from our perspective, we are a partner who partners with our clients and then providers, different vendors and so forth, who work already in those clients to build organizations where you as a business can empower your staff to deliver better customer experience, where you can empower your management to deliver better processes to your employees. And at the end of the day, that obviously allows you to have a better profitability at the bottom line. So from our perspective, we definitely bring a lot of tools and a lot of experience to the table. And one of the key things in here is we are innovative. We're talking about Internet of Things. We're talking about field service. We're talking about how the processes should look like in the modern world, how services should look like in a simple approach from data integration perspective and experience perspective. So that's what the Turnkey is. That's what we do. That's why we are very excited to talk about this Microsoft technology that we've been working for 3 years now, and we've been chatting offline in here that we were very excited where Microsoft is going and then how the technology is improving on daily basis almost with all the exciting thing that Microsoft is doing. So that's next slide, please, Dave.
So I guess this is Dave Bonney. I'm the field service, expert that Rokas was talking about. Well, let's talk about a little bit first what is actually Microsoft Field Service. And this is a definition I got directly from our Microsoft friends. And one of the keys right now with Microsoft Field Service is the ability to manage a mobile workforce. Okay, so a lot of what we're going to focus on today is how that's enabled and why it's one of the premier products on the market. But it all relates to mobile technology by itself, doesn't add the value. It's the connection. It's getting the connection between the skills with the person who has a mobile technology, where that person needs to be, when they need to be there, and making sure that when they get there, they're enabled and they have all the information and inventory on their trucks that they need. So that's what we're going to be focusing on today. So what that, and this is kind of a cool picture, I think, but this, what we're showing here is all of these people that you see in this picture, which is kind of the scope of who the, basically, if you're a field service organization, the scope of what your employees would be doing, with the exception of customer. But all of these people are now connected one way or another through the mobile technology. And we're going to talk and demo that a little bit as we go through. But the customer, we're going to talk about how the customer can be notified when a service technician is on the way, what time they're going to arrive, just a lot of automation behind the scenes with that. Obviously, the dispatcher is connected with the actual service technician. We see the very handsome field technician there in the middle. Inventory is going to be key to all of this. The field technician needs to have the right inventory, and we need to have the right products before we schedule the customer and go on site, and then the service manager is critical. So let's talk about what's interesting. So if you go back a few years, and maybe even currently, a lot of the work that we did when we were providing service was actually captured by filling out forms, documents, that type of thing. If you see that kind of that aged picture there in the middle, that's actually a Palm Pilot. I remember when those came out, I guess it was 20 years ago, and I got one of those. I thought I was the king of technology. Very simple to what you can do today. But what's happening today is that with the whole mobile technology and basically the enablement of being able through cell signals to sync up with anything going on in the cloud or with your customers in new and dynamic ways, all of those old methods are outdated. And so some of the things we're going to discuss today include kind of how schedules can be updated real time, how it all syncs, maps and directions, barcode scanning, which is pretty cool too, because you can actually use your mobile device as a scanner, so you can, if you're moving parts around, you can scan them rather than have to transpose or select products. You know, whole email, that's obvious, but text messaging is such an important part of our current environment. I know that if I want my wife and daughter want me to come up for dinner, they usually send me a text message rather than yelling down in the basement in my office. So it's going everywhere. Equipment manuals, we're going to demonstrate how, you know, technicians were carrying large briefcases full of manuals in the past, but that's all replaced with kind of the capabilities that are built in the mobile client. So this is I like this picture. This is actually via Dave Clark. So it's all about how Dynamics can fix all of those things that have to do with when you're tracking things on paper. And we see this dog, and that dog represents someone in a house waiting for a service technician to arrive. Well, with today's technology, what we have is we actually have the ability to track where our service technicians out. We can actually send messages, and you see a picture of Brady Hannon there. So you can actually send your customers a picture of who the technician is, so they can map that up when they show up. Send them text messages when you're in transit to the site. You can send them text messages, emails, whatever, notifying them of when it's going to be scheduled and happen. So just a lot of things changing there. So before we get started, I really wanted to emphasize some of the value that you're going to see in this and why these value statements are important for you as a service organization to consider, and to consider when you're looking at it in terms of the Microsoft software. So number one, improve your technician's efficiency. What we're really talking about here is kind of improving the efficiency of your organization in terms of the utilization you can get out of your service technicians, the frustration that you can remove from their life, where they know where they're going to go, they know how to get there, they know they've got everything on site. I don't think there's anything more frustrating than getting to a customer site and not having the parts that you need and having to come back. So that's included within this demo. And when you're on site, so this is really critical, when you're on site, we're going to demonstrate this also, just to have the ability to see, you know, the previous work that was performed, and pictures and access to manuals. So, you know, if you're like me, there's nothing worse than looking uneducated in front of a customer. So And you can't know everything, so having just the confidence to know that the manuals are out there if you need some additional information, and they're all with a swipe and a click, you can get that information via the cloud. The flip side of this, because your technicians are going to arrive on site, have what they need, the result is that, you'll keep the customer informed, and we'll demonstrate that. We'll have the history of the equipment. So in terms of customers' confidence, and one of the biggest factors in terms of customer satisfaction is the predictability of the service you're going to provide, the timing of when you're going to get there. Having the history of equipment is another, I think, piece that helps build confidence with your customer. So we're going to demonstrate today how you can go back and see previous work that was performed on that customer equipment, and you can actually look at the type of service that was performed. So when you talk to your customer, and if there's additional service that needs to be performed, you'll be able to show them a history, show them pictures, show them why the recommendations. You've got, even if you weren't the guy that originally, or gal that originally performed the service, you'll have all of that information available, which will help build that customer loyalty, which is really what we're looking for. And a very large percentage of service-related business comes from retaining customers and providing additional services in the future, and as well as references from existing customers. The third aspect of this, and this is kind of a softer one, but I think it's one that's real, and it's one that some of our customers have pointed out, and it's making your service technician a salesperson. So this kind of all wraps back with that increased customer satisfaction, where you have the information on what happened before, but you also have information at your fingertips about what the standard rates are. If you need to come in and do some additional service, you can click through that, and you can actually set up a work order estimate while you're on site and share that with the customer, and through whatever process you've got in place, and turn it into a work order in the future. So the key considerations, so these are the biggest issues that we found when it comes to why people don't want to go with mobile technology. And there's a certain fear factor that's associated with it, but we're going to show you today why those fears are unwarranted. So the number one issue, we always hear this, is with mobile applications, it's got to be easy to use. So field service technicians are not going to want to go out there and do a lot of training on this app. If it takes them long to learn, the adoption is going to be low, and what they'll do is they'll fall back into their old habits and update things after the fact, which really destroys the value in what we're going to show you today. So kind of what we do as a guideline is we ought to be able to educate a field service technician in a couple hours or so, and give them some sort of environment where they can demo and get comfortable with it, but it shouldn't be very hard to learn how to use, and we're going to demonstrate why we think what we have here today with Microsoft is very easy. Another thing it's got to do, you got to be able to, I think if I'm a technician and I'm out in the field, what I want to know is that I've got something that's better than what I had before. And so there's ways. Number one, it's going to be easier to use than doing paperwork. But the other thing it's going to give me all this information that I can click and touch and get access to without having to call back into the office. I'm not going to have the office call and tell me where to go. I'm going to be able to, through just looking at my device, where I go next. Okay, so all of that will be managed through your mobile device, and you'll start to live with it and love it, is the way I refer to it. And the other value statement in this, obviously, is you've got a very connected world. So everything you're doing as a technician is captured. It's shared with the office via the cloud. If there's changes in your schedule, everything is updated immediately, real time, just about, so that as a technician, you know where to go next. So now we're going to switch to the more fun part of it, which is actually the demo. And I'm going to start by bringing up the schedule board. So this is the schedule board. Okay, now what is the schedule board? And what is the value in the schedule board? Well, you can see a couple of things happening here. And what we were talking about, and some of the value with me as a service technician is I want to know that I have enough time to travel between locations. I want to know that there's, that what I'm being projected to do at a customer site is accurate. So I've got work orders out there that say they take 2 hours, and I've got what this is showing here is travel time to get in between the previous work order and the current work order. So as a service technician, I am extremely connected with the office in terms of what the time is and how long it'll be till my next work order starts, and I can feel confident in that. If you look down the list here right now, you can also see, or look to the left, you can also see a map showing the routes. So as a service technician, everything is being mapped out, and you can check with these maps to see how efficiently things are being set up. Let's see with Luke here, he's got only a couple of them scheduled. Let's zero in on Luke over here. So what we're seeing now is we're seeing Luke's last location. I just clicked on that work order. Well, let's say, Luke, we know you can do some more work than that, so we're going to zoom out here and find other open work orders that are related to what Luke may be working on. So we'll try and schedule something that's in the same location. So I drag this over, and I can actually bring that next work order up into the map over here, and I can drag it over once it gets totally updated out there and schedule it right here. So I could schedule Luke's location now, so he goes to the next site based on where he's at now. So from a overall efficiency, cutting down travel, making sure Luke has got something he can drive to that's close, this really kind of fills the bill. So now what I'm going to do,
Dave,
yeah, go ahead. Yes.
I'm a service manager, and I'm looking at this thing, and let me just make sure I understood correctly what you just kind of said and showed in here. So first of all, the tool provides me this powerful solution where I can, or a dispatcher can potentially go in and then schedule the things in a visual way. Is that correct? I mean, that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at resources. I'm looking at their utilization, looking at their time. I'm looking to see how much travel time they have and how much things they have to do in any particular day of the week and of the month and so forth, right?
That's correct.
Okay, but the key thing is, I can actually do what I can to optimize my resource assignment in such a way where Luke, based on your example, doesn't have to drive 20 miles one way, 20 miles back to another job and lose a lot of time, because if we pay Luke based on the job completed, or, we measure performance based on that, we want to make sure that he is optimized, that he is somebody who can do the work in most effective way, stay in one territory, save on gas, save on beating up the van that he drives around the town and so forth, but he can kind of know the schedule, know what he needs to do, and then be able to perform his job in most effective way. And then this tool can help us to kind of do the dispatcher aspect and also the field service resource aspect as well.
Yeah, that's correct. And a couple things, there's a lot more built in here I didn't show. Where you can actually filter it by skills and everything. So when you got the work orders out here, you can confirm you got the right skills. And I think the thing, you make a very good point here, is if I'm a service technician, I don't want to spend time driving around and then drive back past that same location just to find out if things had been scheduled differently. I could have cut 2 hours out of my day of travel. So this tool really helps you do that.
Perfect.
So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch to a view. So I'm going to be Dan Jump for a while. And being Dan Jump, I want to do a good job for my company, but there's also things that I need to make sure that are happening outside of work. So one of the really nice features that Microsoft has added is this integration of field service with your same calendar you're using for your personal schedule. So what I'm doing here, in Dan Jump, I actually set Dan Jump as a person and set up this calendar. And if you notice, Dan Jump looks like he says, well, at 8 o'clock, I know I've got something coming up, a work order coming up. I've got another work order coming up here. But look, my anniversary dinner is still good down here, and it's more important for me to keep my wife happy than it is for me to make sure if anything's going to interfere with that, my schedule is going to cause me personal conflict. So this gives you that view to see everything that's going on, and as Dan Jump, I can know that just taking a look at everything, what I've got scheduled for the day. So let me go ahead and switch to the mobile client. So Dan Jump may look at this first thing in the morning. Now he's going to go look at his mobile client view. So this is the actual mobile client, and just kind of as an introduction to this, the mobile client that we're using in this case is a Samsung Tab 4. It's probably 2 years old. It's just a 5x7 screen, larger screens, bigger footprints to run this on. It becomes a little easier, but the main point is basically you can run this on any mobile device that's been made in the last 4 years or so, Android, iPhone, any of it. It all works. So the first thing, if I'm Dan Jump and I'm thinking, let's go ahead and start my day and kind of see a summary of what's going on. So what I'll do is go look at my dashboard. So this is actually showing a dashboard of my truck inventory. So I could tell what's on there and what I need. So there's allocated inventory showing up there, but if you look to the far right, we'll see we got a little problem with the flexible tube. So we may want to consider that, during our route or before we even start out. So we're going to take an example and show how Dan can use this information to go out and kind of get some additional parts in his truck. The other thing that this allows
Dave, I have one quick question. So
Sure.
Just to clarify, I am Dan. I logged in. I'm looking at an inventory, and the inventory allocation you mentioned and the shortage is based on the actual work orders that are assigned to me for that particular day or a week.
Well, it's actually any work order assigned for you that's moving forward is shown up in that allocated inventory, yes. So you could tell if you're going to be short on parts and what parts you need to get.
So this is not a template, stuff your truck with these things all the time. This is more or less, well, you're going to be doing this kind of work, therefore we know from a template perspective what kind of things we're going to have to do, what kind of parts we're going to use. Therefore, before you roll out of the service depot, make sure you have these things, or before you get to the customer side, make sure you have what you need, right? So
That's
the
correct.
point is that it's always changing based on what kind of work we're doing.
Yeah, it should be based on what you actually physically have in your truck and what you need. So
Perfect. Thank you for clarification.
And the other thing this is showing, and this is not a real good example because I don't have a lot of data loaded, but it shows you what type of work you're going to be doing. So it shows I've got one inspection and one service call. And this is very customizable. So as Dan starts thinking about this, he kind of understands the complexity of what he wants to do or what he has to do for today and kind of gets in his head kind of the level of effort and what type of activities he's going to be involved in. And the third thing over here, and I don't have any off time, but the other thing that's important to Dan is that any type of time off requests, that the system's capturing that and that's being synchronized and that people are taking that into consideration and not scheduling Dan over his vacation time or his valuable time with his wife. So now we know Dan looked at that and he found out he's short on some 12-inch pipe. So Dan's going to have to go in and purchase that pipe probably before he gets to his first work order, his first service. And so what I'm going to, one of the biggest things we found, and this is kind of a Dan view of things, that if I go in and I've got to buy parts that aren't in the warehouse, I need to be able to do that fast, and I need to be able to do that, without impacting my schedule. It ought to be as quick as going in and checking out normally if you're buying it for yourself. From the flip side, the actual our service organization side, there's other considerations, right? You got to be able to know what was purchased. There's got to be evidence that was purchased. It's a whole accountability. It's got to follow all the paperwork chain. It's got to go through actual payments and purchase orders. So we have kind of this dynamic where what Dan wants and what the organization wants may be a little bit in conflict. So we've set up a nice way to get around this called the counter POs. And what a counter PO is a way of automating all of that, and I'll go ahead and click the plus sign, so that when you go in and you're Dan and you need to purchase something, this is going to minimize your frustration while still fulfilling basically your obligations of accountability to the organization and subsequent payments that will result from this purchase. So the first thing I would do if I'm Dan, I'd go in and select my vendor. Now, your approved vendor list will already be on there. So when you bring this up, you'll be able to see, vendors that are on there. And I'm going to go ahead and select AA Supply Company. Now, if you notice here, I've got a little toggle switch that says inventory item. no, or yes. So if it's a non-inventory item, which means it could just be miscellaneous parts. So those are things we really don't count and keep track of that closely. So if it's a non-inventory item, I can go in and buy that and just enter a description, and I'll show you how you can capture the receipt and other information in just a minute. And after you capture that information, it's going to go ahead and behind the scenes create a purchase order, and it's going to apply it to what we call a counter PO, which will automatically give you the accountability to basically a captured receipt, what was purchased. But from your standpoint, there's just not much involved because you can go ahead and basically just do it all off of this one easy screen. So in this case, I'm going to say, well, I need the 12-inch pipe, so I'm going to toggle this to yes. So now if you notice, our screen dynamically changed, and it's asking us what kind of product we want to purchase. So these are things that are now inventoried items. And I'll go down and find my 12-inch pipe and select it. I can add some additional description on there if I want. And one of the nice features of this device is it allows us to talk to it as well as key things in. So I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate that real quick. Purchase 12-inch pipe. Well, at AA Supply Company. And so if you notice too, what happened there, I also captured the real quick stuff, so I was a little quicker. So I can go back and basically edit that out. I'm not going to do it now because this is not a very big device.
So Dave, just to
Yes.
just to clarify, I mean, you took a text field and instead of typing in on your device, you just spoke and it converted to voice to text. So really, you can do this, and that's really, I mean, can you do this any place where you want to capture any kind of notes within the system, whether it's a work order, scheduling, time off reasons, inventory entry forms?
Yes, any place you want to capture text, you can use the speech to text. And I will tell you that most service technicians prefer to use the speech to text as compared to actually trying to use their thumbs to key through and key this in, especially some of the ones that have been doing this for a while. So just to continue down here, so we're trying to make this easy for Dan. So he just spoke in a few things. He could come back and edit it, but it's just basically the same as any mobile device. Now the other thing is, how did he pay for this? So Dan happens to have a company credit card, so we'll do credit card, but it could be check, it could be cash. We can enter the quantity purchased, which is, let's say he bought 22 of these. We can enter the purchase amount down here. And so Dan says, okay, I've got everything I need. I'm ready to go. Let's go ahead and save this. And, I've got my stuff. I'm ready to leave. Well, okay, so now all of a sudden we get this message, picture must be included with counter PO. So what that is requiring us to do is come in and take a picture. So what I'm going to do is take that picture real quick, and this is where we're going to perform some, you'll see after I do this, my screen will probably reorient the wrong way, but I'm going to go ahead and click that camera there. And I'm going to take a picture. Here's a picture of a very official looking AA Supply Company receipt, which if I got this, I would probably ask Dan to pay for it himself because that doesn't really look like a real receipt. I'm going to save that picture. And this is where it actually, I'm going to jump out for a second and reorient this thing. But basically what I'm going to show you before I do that is when I flip this to yes, you'll notice that somewhat inverted picture that the red's gone away and I'm now able to save my counter PO, and I'll get out and do this.
So while you're saving the counter PO, the important thing that Dave talked about was, well, Dan wants to keep the thing simple. But the challenge with that is that, well, maybe Dan will be happy with the simple process. However, the accounting and executive ownership of the company might be not too happy because cash flow is a little bit too loose and so forth. So what we trying to show in here is, we typically as the turnkey, we will look at what are the accounting processes, what do we need to do to potentially bill vendor, track the cost of the projects, understand the delivery costs, understand where we're buying the stuff, negotiate the buying contracts and so forth, and we'll figure out how to bring that forward. So as you see right here, I mean, on the back end, we assume that there is a proper requisition processes in place, that accounting potentially, you know, keep pretty good tab on how people buy the stuff, why people buy the stuff, are they potentially buying not from the best price items, outlets and so forth. So what Dave is demonstrating in here is kind of the front end, how to keep the den happy, but we also keep in our priorities on the back end, accounting happy to make sure that everything balances out properly, and we can focus on the optimization of the bottom line as we try to make a customer happy, Dan happy, and everybody else.
So the and thanks, Rokas. And the nice thing with that too is what Dan's done. He's just got his receipt in. So normally those of us in consulting never like to fill out expense reports. Well, we basically filled out a lot of Dan's expense report for him because we already have, you know, who it was. We could have applied it to a work order too. So there's a lot of things we could have done. But from Dan's standpoint, 90% of the work is done to completing his expense reporting. So it's a win-win situation. So now what we're going to do is go look at what Dan's actually got scheduled for today. And we could see kind of that same graphic view we saw from the earlier calendar. So we're going to pretend Dan is at this Contoso. I'm sorry, I like shopping at Costco, so I guess that's a natural thing. So Dan, right when he gets ready to start, he's going to show that he's traveling to the site. So what that does is a lot of different things. That can trigger basically a notification going out to the customer via text that I'm Dan, here's my picture, I'm on the way, I'll be there in 20 minutes, because it knows his travel time. And we could have it triggered even off the completion of the one prior to this. But in this case, we're showing it whenever he starts traveling, it gives an immediate notification because it knows his travel time, knows the customer, they'll get a text message on it. Basically, the other thing, so if I'm Dan, I go, I'm traveling there now, but I don't know how to get there. So this is going to be kind of a wild thing, but I'm going to go ahead and bring up my map, and it shows me where that customer's at. But I'm going, well, let's go ahead and get navigation instructions. I want to know what the traffic's like. So I go ahead and bring this up. Now you'll see that what's interesting is when it figures the actual travel time, you instruct the application whether Dan starts working from his home or from the office. So the travel time is computed on Dan starting from, I think we had him set up from his home. But in this case, Dan, although he should be working from home, is sitting in St. Louis, Missouri, which is 2,000 plus miles away. And so this shows him, it takes him 31 hours to drive there, but it shows you the capabilities that are built into this, and can give you traffic. It could show you alternate routes, which is what this is showing you also. So basically, Dan has got what he needs to get to that customer site. So now Dan has got directions, and it's given him turn-by-turn directions, and he arrives on the customer site. So the first thing Dan may do is go back and look at kind of a summary of what the work order instructions are. In this case, too, it's showing you something that's pretty important, which is how to get into the building, because a lot of times there may be combinations or things that people need. So we're showing entry instructions here, so how he can get in. We're going to go down, and Dan's going to look at, let's look at what piece of equipment I need to work on while I'm there. So he's in the building, he's looking at the piece of equipment, and it's the X12 MRI machine. Now we assume, because Dan just got directions here, that Dan has never been at this customer before, so he probably wants to have some idea what kind of equipment he's going to be working on. So he can click on this equipment information now. And what it shows, it's showing a history. If you look down here at the actual, down here where it says work orders, it's showing the previous work orders that were performed on this equipment. So Dan may want to go down and bring up an old work order, see what that looks like, work order 13. Let's say maybe there were some pictures or things taken with it, so we can look at the pictures that were taken with that equipment. So this is showing you, in just a second, a picture of the equipment as it looked like when the last service technician was there. So So he can get a history basically of what kind of work orders were performed on that equipment. So let's say he's sitting there and he's looking at his new work order, and Dan goes, there's some things I don't know, maybe about the control modules and things like that on this equipment. I'd sure like to have access to some product reference manuals. So if you could see, there's actually a product associated with this customer-owned asset, and it says product up there. So I'm going to click on product. And what that does, it takes me to that actual product that was installed. So a lot of times what we'll have on here, we'll have warranty information, we'll have serial numbers, we'll have all of that type of information. But the other thing we've got down here, which is really critical, and I mentioned that earlier, was it's important for Dan to have access to manuals, because Dan may not know everything about this X12 MRI machine. So he can come down here and he can find his cloud documents. And he clicks on this. What he's going to actually do is bring up a document, a full document related to that piece of equipment. And we can go over here and we can navigate specifically, because it's a PDF file, and we have all of our normal PDF commands that are associated with it, and navigate directly to the control panel. And he can scan through it like he would any other document, and he can enlarge it if he wants, if his eyes are getting bad, like mine. He can make it bigger, read it. So everything he needs, any kind of manual he needs on equipment, can be stored with the product. So the key thing about it, it's not stored with each work order, it's stored specifically with the product. So anyone who uses that product will have access to that information. So we've seen what basically what the XR12 machine is. We know what the customer's done on it before. So now Dan's feeling very confident that he can go ahead and complete this work order. So let's go back and look at the actual work order and the work that needs to be done. So the first thing he may do is let's go down and look at the tasks that need to be performed. Well, it looks like there's basically 4 tasks here. So Dan's going to go in and it's going to give him instructions on what he needs to do. We find that this is really important if you're doing like preventive maintenance and you have some specific tasks that need to be done. This way is you get a record of every task being completed, and you make sure that your service technician is acknowledging that that task has been completed. So from Dan's standpoint, Dan just wants to get his work done and doesn't want to record too much. So we make it very easy for Dan to complete a task. We basically just slide that toggle there to complete. We exit and we save and close. So now we have one task complete. We can go and complete the other tasks. So it virtually takes Dan no time to acknowledge that he's completed the task. And you see how easy it is. I mean, I'm going through all 4 tasks here in just a matter of seconds. So the key to that, the key thing that I just showed you and I demonstrated on that was what? How easy it is for Dan to use it, how easy it is for him to just, we like to think of everything as we minimize the amount of data that you need to input and leverage other technology, like setting up your options for you, making data that's required, that we need for our accountability in terms of, you know, our financial and inventory type of accountability, as well as our accountability to our customers. So products, these are actually the parts that Dan's using and he's pulling off his truck. So I'll go ahead and basically I can take that and switch it from estimated to used. I can change the quantity up here if I want. You notice if I change the quantity, it's also going to change the bill quantity. So all of that's happening automatically for me. I'm going to go ahead and click out, save and close. I'm going to do the next item. These are all parts that are being replaced. If I didn't use them, I just leave them as estimated and it doesn't even come off. So the key to this is when you set up these, they're actually the way that the templates that you set up for services, you can have the commonly used parts in there. So your service technician doesn't need to enter that information. If he did need to enter information, or she, you could have him do that. Add new parts and products. So basically, we've shown the tasks that are done. We've shown the products. We can go into the services. We could enter a description of what the service was, what the duration was. So if I click on here, I could use my voice to text again, which is completed full service and provided estimate for future work. There we go. Once again, I'm going to go ahead and take that out. Okay, so I've got my description. I've got some hours on there. Click back here. I'll save and close. So I've captured a description of the work that I performed. So now what I'm ready to do, I'm ready to say, okay, I've completed this work order. I'm going to go ahead and let's go back up to the top. So I can click up here to go back up to the top. If you look down here, we've got a flag that says whether or not we're going to, well, somewhere on here, work order type service call, or we can flag it and say email receipt. So we can go ahead and click that, which means when we save this and we sync with basically the server, it's going to generate a, and we can sync it as soon as we get out by just selecting the sync functionality. It will send them a receipt. You can stay on site and wait till they get the receipt if you want to, but it's a receipt of the work that's performed. It could include a signature, which is easy to do also. So let's say you wanted to make sure you got a signature on this. You could do that. Get the customer to sign it. My signing is not real good today, but anyway. So I've captured a signature on it, and I am now, let me get back in it again. I clicked out on the wrong thing there. So I'm now ready to close this out. And I'm going to go ahead and change the status. I should have changed the status on this to in progress, but I'm going to go ahead and change it to completed. So wait for a second to synchronize on that, and we'll change the status to completed. So what we've shown here is how easy it is to basically perform a work order, how easy it is for the customer to, or the service technician to perform this work. And I've got the synchronization. You can set up the timing of it so that it synchronizes.
So also to avoid any of the synchronization issues or people being in the basements and not having the cell phone coverage, can we use this in offline mode?
I am using it in offline mode right now, so yes. And just synchronizing it, I mean, like 80%, 90% of the work is done in offline mode, and then whenever you get to, I'll show you at the top up here, you can, this little round circle up here, you can actually use that to sync your work back up with the cloud. So that allows Dan to basically work and not get frustrated while it syncs up, and you can change the sync intervals on here on how often it's going to automatically sync so that he can get his work done and he can decide when he wants to sync, and all the information he needs is in his tablet, whether he's on site or connected to the internet or not. So that's a key factor to consider. So let's go ahead. That's kind of our quick demo of the mobile technology. Let's switch back to our view here and talk about what we just did. So here's a recap of what we just showed you. We showed you how we could schedule your technician and how we could look at travel location. We could look at the map, and we could identify next work orders based on location of other work. We can actually filter it out based on if it's a unique skill. So in this case, Dan has MRI certification, so that allows him to do this type of work. And basically, then your service technician can use that information to travel to the next location by just using the same kind of things we all use when we travel. First-time resolution. Having the right parts, we demonstrated that and how Dan knew what he had on the truck, and he was able to instantly, go and purchase some additional parts that he needed, and how easy that was for him to do. Instant access to schedule changes. So we updated Luke with a new schedule, and once something is updated and synced up, it's immediately available to Luke. And it keeps the customer in the loop. We can automatically notify them of when we're going to be there. We can send them a receipt on what the work is we just performed. And it's easy to use. I think we definitely demonstrated how easy this was to use. So the big question is, with all of these features, how do I move forward? Okay, and the you know, it looks, you know, when you see a demo like this, hopefully it looks pretty cool, right? But will this really provide the improved efficiencies and everything? Is it really going to perform the same way as it looks? Will it really be easy for my field service technicians to use? Will this mobile functionality really allow us to do all the things I just demonstrated? And how does this compare to, you know, basically what my bottom line is? How do I get, you know, what's the value in this versus the cost? So what we've done is we've developed this thing called the field service assessments that answers these questions. And what it is, it's an interactive, questionnaire where we actually guide you through categories of questions, and those questions relate to two different things. It relates to the value to your organization of what that specific functionality is, and then how well you map against current capabilities that are out there in the market based on some of the things I just showed you. So if you look at this graph, and then what happens is, behind the scenes, I guess I should fill this in, behind the scenes what happens is that automatically how you answer those questions populates this chart. So this is an actual chart that we developed based on an actual field service assessment that we did. And if you look at this, it's showing a couple different things. That the customer we were dealing with in this case had a very high need for better financial accountability and integration with kind of their financial systems. And inventory, they felt like inventory was out of control. Every question we asked them was a very high need, and their current capabilities were low. And the other one that's on here, that's a couple of the others that are higher, like the optimized delivery. So we go through, we blow out this chart, but the other thing we do is when we're going through here, we capture the answers that you provide us to these questions, so that we can come back and we can present you with kind of a blow by blow on each of those categories on what we heard and why we think this software technology is going to help you. So this is one with a very low capabilities one, and it has to do with how you schedule your technicians when they're on site. It's just a whole optimization around what a technician spends his time on. And when we present this basically the field service assessment back to you, one of the deliverables out of this is that assessment where we go through specifically these categories and what we feel like the gaps are based on how you responded to those questions and how new technology can impact that. So what we're looking at here is optimized delivery. We could easily go from 3 or 4 service stops a day up to 5 or 6. Okay, so and we can base that on kind of basically the inefficiencies that are happening now and the efficiencies you're going to gain out of this new system. And that's how we talk it back. So we specifically talk back to or give you feedback specifically on how this is going to help you, not just general statements that it is going to improve your efficiency. Same thing with inventory. That was another high one. And that was, a lot of it was process as well as the software to support that process. And the fear was, and it's probably a valid one, that there was a lot of inventory dollars that were walking out the door. So we can tighten that down, and we can make it easy to tighten down that inventory issue. And part of it is because we can do like more expensive products, we can do scanning, and we can automatically pull parts on and off the truck based on just swiping and clicking. And we can create basically an inventory in the truck, an inventory in the warehouse where things just don't walk away, but the service technicians don't feel so burdened that they don't want to use the system. So what it is, just to kind of recap, because this is kind of a high-level overview of this, is this field service assessment provides the customer with an excellent understanding of where they're at and where technology is at today. And I would contend this field service assessment works no matter what type of product you're looking at. Although not all of the functionality in the other products may be at the same level of the Microsoft product, at least it gives you a roadmap as to where the technology is at in general. And it also provides us with a very good understanding of what your needs are and where you need to go to. And as part of this, we actually provide you back with a demo. So the last step on this is actually a demo. So field service assessments are available. You can go to our website and sign up for them. At this point, they're totally free, I believe, still. But the value in it to your organization, if you want to make this next step, is extremely high. So now we're going to transition to the question and answer period.
Hey, Dave Bonney, this is Dave Clark. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine, Dave.
Yeah, and I did quickly want to give Microsoft's perspective on this. So hey, everyone on the line, I'm Dave Clark, Microsoft employee, and I work very closely with Turnkey Technologies. I mean, the first thing I do want to stress is that Turnkey is Microsoft's chosen field service partner in the Midwest United States. And this is for a few reasons. The first reason is when the product was launched a few years ago, Turnkey was actually one of the first partners to ever become certified and has shown their competence in the solution. Turnkey continually will finish our on-site trainings and our online trainings and stay up to date with the new features, the new functions, and new releases, and also where the product is heading. And one example of this is how Turnkey is pursuing what's known as connected field service, which is a solution that we offer where internet-connected things or devices, also known as Internet of Things, can send status updates, and these status updates can in turn create field service visits. And it's something that not many partners are doing at the moment. Another important thing from Microsoft's perspective is, does the partner have an established ERP practice? And this is really important for field service implementations. Because a lot of these field service implementations require field service knowledge, but also accounting and inventory knowledge, as Dave alluded to. And quickly touching upon the Turnkey's field service assessment program that Dave talked about, it helps organizations absorb this technology, and it's actually been reviewed and approved by the worldwide Microsoft field service team. And it's been reviewed for both its technical accuracy, but also for its business analysis. So from Microsoft's perspective, when we try and have our go-to partners, Turnkey comes up because, one, they're established and certified, they have a strong ERP practice, and also the field service assessment program being reviewed and approved goes a long way.
Yeah, I don't know if we have any questions or not.
Yeah, hi everybody, this is Brad with Turnkey. We do have one question from Patrick. How do you manage a dynamic workforce, say third-party contractors that are not part of your field operations workforce?
Dave Clark, would you like to take that one, or would you like me to take it?
Yeah, so when someone is an employee of your company, they have access to pretty much any information they need. But if they're a subcontractor, there's a few ways to do it. You can give them limited access to the mobile application and have them log in. And the other option is you give them access to a portal, and they can have certain abilities to enter or view information. The only issue that we sometimes see with dealing with contractors is how often can you see their availability. You know all the availability of your employees, but when it comes to scheduling subcontractors, there might need to be another layer in there to understand when they're available and therefore schedule them a job. But once you do schedule them a job, it's pretty easy to give them that information.
And there are a couple ways on how we can give that information, so to speak, to them. So one of the simple things is obviously can send out an email, and then they can reply back to an email, and that becomes the dispatcher's responsibility, so to speak, to make sure that the things are properly connected, updated, and so forth. Obviously, then you lose a little bit of the visibility and benefits of having those contractors update things, on the statuses, put notes and that kind of stuff. The other way to potentially do it is to extend a portal, and we have done that in the past where, if you're working with a contractor and they say, yeah, we will be absorbing certain holidays, and therefore they will put the entire day or week as a time off. So potentially you can have the contractors go in and then actually update some things from availability perspective, uploading the documents, invoices, and other things like that on the portal, as well as potentially they can get to the level of details where they can interact with some of these work orders, where they can look at the schedule and so forth. So obviously there's, a licensing consideration depending on where you go from a functionality perspective, but there are a number of options of how this can be done. Now, the interesting thing to also consider is that anybody that you pay out to is potentially somebody who should be in your ERP system as some kind of entity set up, whether it's an employee or a vendor or whatnot. So if you look at the screen that Dave is showing in here, I mean, if we kind of boil it down to the specific details in here, you can see that this scheduling board right here shows some resources, Dan, Luke, and so forth. These resources can be accounts, can be contacts, can be users. So once again, if you want to set up somebody who is just a contact that you want to, like Dave was talking about, schedule something, send out an email, and not care about them updating some of the details, you can fully do this with the system. Or you can start there and potentially add more complexity for some of the contractors that you do more work with. So really the point is that you have a lot of choices based on your business processes and based on who are your contractors that you will be working with. So hope that answers that part of the question. Another question is kind of related to something that Dave mentioned briefly, is Internet of Things. How big does organization have to be to potentially consider any sort of Internet of Things? We have some examples where the companies were pretty small. I mean, 5, 10 people that they were talking about innovative devices be put in the customer locations that help to monitor moisture, monitor services being on, off, and that kind of stuff. So you don't have to think about being, a multi-million-dollar company, global, to be able to take advantage of some of this Internet of Things sort of capabilities within the system. So if you have any thoughts, let us know. If you're thinking about anything specific, but we have used things as simple as telematics of moving vehicles and speed, and then how long the engine was on and how hot the engine is and how hot its coolant is and so forth, to the things where, as I said, we're measuring the moisture levels, we're measuring some other things that are very unique to very small applications for, very specific niche of the customer requirements. Do you have any other questions, Brad?
No, that was it.
All right. Well, with that, we're at the top of the hour in here, and I would like to thank everybody for attending. And before we jump off, I would like to mention that we have another webinar scheduled. So please go to our website, register. We're looking forward to continuing the conversations. We also have pre-recorded videos of the webinars that happened in the past. The first one that kicked off the series was kind of an overview state of the field service and all the components that are included in there. And then, as you see, we're diving in some specific elements of all of the things important to the field service. So our next webinar will be the optimization of your field service operations. So we'll be talking about better scheduling, better way of understanding the cost, better way of potentially routing your people even automatically. So we're looking forward to the next set of conversations and looking forward to presenting to you guys. Thank you very much.